So Eleanor, can you tell me something about the background and the history of the food bank in Calne?
Yeah, we were approached by the Trussell Trust, who really wanted us to cover the whole of North Wilts and Trowbridge and West Wilts, but we thought that was a bit much. So we started up, chair of the partnership in those days, and he took the lead. And I represented the Methodist Church. We had a group, but there didn't seem to be anybody else on it. So anyway, Richard and I took it and ran. And the first thing we did was have a meeting with all the agencies that we thought would probably make use of a food bank, or whose clients would make use of a food bank. So that was quite interesting. And really the feeling was of its time. I think there were a lot of people who, it was health visitors, district nurses. I think we wrote to schools, but nobody came. We wrote to GPs, but nobody came. So it was mainly a health professional meeting, and they were really keen. And interestingly, the district nurses had a big problem with people being discharged from hospital, particularly, excuse me, the elderly, who had no food in the house. I don't think that's an issue at the moment, from what I've heard. Mm-hmm. But it was that sort of thing, and they were very keen. And what we decided on together was the model which we thereafter used, which was that they or somebody they could have access to would store the bags that we made up, and so that when they gave a bag out, they would then ring me and I would replace it, or Richard, but mostly because we were covering outside as well. Outside of Calne, I covered Calne and Richard covered the outlying areas. So, for instance, the health visitors were in and out of the health centre. So we stored some food bags in the health centre, and the nurses and the health visitors could give them out. There were other places too. It gradually built up where there was a drugs place in Calne which we used. Sadie had some at Church House. She was the only, if you could like, non-professional, and she was the only person who clients went to directly. So her setup was a little bit different from what we did with everybody else. And actually that really worked pretty well, but it was a very small operation. If we gave out 2 bags a month, I think we thought, we were okay. And of course it's about 2 bags every 2 minutes, I think, now. So it was very different, but gradually it built up, and we got more donations of food in. Donations mainly came through the churches, because it was a partnership of churches initiative, as you know. And we began to feel the need of more support and a bit more room. Richard and I kept the food in our respective kitchens. Fortunately, I've got quite a big one. So there were boxes of baked beans and packets of pasta all over the place. It did give me something to fill up my large kitchen after my children had left home. So we carried on that for a while. So Richard unfortunately became ill and couldn't carry on. And he was replaced by Hugh Pilcher-Clayton, who also in time became ill and couldn't carry on. It must be something to do with the food bank. So at that point, we began to get busier, and we just happened to be chatting about it in a small meeting I attend at church. And then the next thing that happened was we were all upstairs surveying our only storage, which was the little rooms upstairs in the Methodist Church. And we decided that the food would fit in one of the rooms if we reorganised it. And the next thing I knew, Derek and Michelle Gard were reorganising it, and they invested in shelves and put them up. And I must say, although everybody says how terrible it is, it was a great improvement on what I used to do. Upstairs rooms to store the food and also to pack bags. And by that time, we were really in need of more help. So we got more volunteers. We had a couple of people who did the whole thing when I was on holiday or away for a while. We had Eileen and Mike, who joined us later and did all the shopping, and Mike did all the stats. And so what we needed to do was have somebody to pack bags, which was absolutely great. And later on, we were joined by another bagpacker, Maureen, who's worth her weight in gold, or tins of baked beans, probably. However, the increase kept going, things kept increasing, and the demand was greater. And it became obvious that really, that neither the premises nor the model really that we were using was really satisfactory for the times we'd moved into. And we probably needed somewhere, premises where people could come in and collect their own bags, or even the agencies could collect them rather than me delivering them, which was what was happening. So we went back to the partnership, and in fact, I remember going back a couple of times to say, we've got this problem. And we got help. We got help from Stan and subsequently from John in looking for premises for us. But unfortunately, either we found premises and they didn't want us to have them, or we didn't find them. Mostly we didn't find them. We went to the council as well, and they seemed to be very keen to help us. But again, nothing actually materialised. So we were still charging up and down the stairs at the back of the Methodist church, and the whole of our foyer and porch was full of stacked boxes of food, which wasn't ideal. I mean, it's fine. It's a good use of a church foyer, I think, but people did keep falling over them, which was a bit of a problem. And we were soldiering on really in that way when we were hit by universal credit. That was a real game changer. We'd long ago decided not to go with the Trussell Trust model of 3 strikes and you're out. We decided that a need was a need. In fact, I remember early on, some of the donors, some of the people, those who gave out the bags, saying, well, what are your criteria? And I had great pleasure in saying, if you think they're in need, they're in need. It's not our decision. We're just the providers. And I thought, I've been waiting to say that all my professional life. Yeah. However, that was the way we worked. And if people were waiting 5 weeks or much longer sometimes for their money, you can't just say, well, I'm sorry, you can only have 3 bags. So it really was a very difficult time. It got a bit better eventually when the rollout was finished, but there was always the catch up. And at that time, I had a lengthy correspondence with our local MP, who, and the whole correspondence just made me realise what I knew already, which was that the people working in the Department of Work and Pensions have no more idea of how people live than fly to the moon, really. So it was a case of banging our heads against the brick wall. However, I'm glad that the subsequent publicity about universal credit did change that. So we were soldiering on, really finding things more and more difficult just to keep going because things got very, very busy. And it was wonderful to have the help that we did have. Teresa, who was by this time deputising for me, and Maureen packing bags, and Eileen and Mike in the background. We still needed to do some shopping because you don't always get the right stuff. But it wasn't just me, it was a team, although a small one. And really, we were just about keeping our heads above water when the pandemic hit. And in a few days, it became perfectly obvious that our model was not going to work. You can't make the assumption that people who needed food in those situations had any sort of problem with budgeting or which was really one of the reasons for our original model, so that everybody who received a food bag would be in touch with the worker who would be in a position to help them. We were just about soldiering on and just about keeping our heads above water when the pandemic hit. It was obvious in a few days that we just couldn't, we didn't have the right setup. We'd sorted out the church porch and cleaned it up and wiped everything and supplied ourselves with everything we needed, but it just wasn't going to work. Our premises were just not suitable, although we had all the food. So really, in a few days, it was negotiated that it should move to Church House, and Kevin took over. And in a way, I suppose it just forced everybody's hand. So we had to move out of where we were. I'm just delighted with the way it's going. But I know it's a lot of hard work for the present team.
I'm here in the food bank with Kevin, who's currently running the food bank, so that we can learn a bit more about how it works and what sort of things they do and how people are helping during this time, this difficult time of the coronavirus pandemic. Here we are in the food bank, and as you can see, they've got plenty of food all the way around, all nicely organised into different groups of different items. Here we have the typical contents of a food bank parcel. So I'm going to hand you over to Kevin, and he's going to tell us what's in there.
So as Stephen just said, this is the contents of a typical family bag, actually, to last 3 days. And it's made up from a list to give us some guidance. And there's different lists for, or different packs for a single person or a couple. And if it's a big family, we might add to it, obviously, as appropriate.
So Kevin, how often can people come to the food bank and pick up a parcel?
Right, well, at the moment there are no limitations. The bags that we issue are meant to last 3 days, that's all. So it's to get them over a period of crisis, really. But after 3 days they can come back, and they can come back. There are no limitations. If they are in need, they can come back. And I should also say that there are no stipulations at the moment. So we don't take names and addresses. We just do it on trust that there's a need, and that's it, really. That's so if people need, they can come back.
So it's like showing the generosity of God in a way to the community.
Yeah, it is.
With no conditions.
I probably should say that there will be people out there who say, oh, you'll get people taking advantage. And that's kind of inevitable, but there are so few who do that that it's not worth worrying about. It would be to the detriment of lots of other people if we kind of really clamp down. So we do it on trust. And the other thing to say, I suppose, is that we do cater for dietary needs. We can do vegetarian bags if there is a need, and indeed we have a regular customer who has a vegetarian bag. And all those
people
things.
could go on Facebook to keep an eye on what's going on
Absolutely.
on the food bank.
Or they can contact us through the our Gmail emails. So if they've got any needs, they can contact. And we deliver, of course, as well.
Excellent. Delivery service as well.
Yes.
Very good.
Free of charge.
Lovely.
And I suppose the other thing to say is that the people who are eligible, it's anyone in the Marden Vale area.
Right.
So it's not just Calne, it's the Marden Vale area.
So the villages around.
Absolutely,
Derry Hill,
Derry, yes.
Bremel, all those villages.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
But I should point out that you said I'm involved with the food bank, but I'm part of a much wider team and a really good team. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions as best I can.
That's good, thank you. So you've told us about what goes in a family bag, and you can do different types of bags.
Yes.
And what has been the impact of the pandemic on the food bank?
Well, as you can imagine, it's been pretty horrendous, really, and a great impact. And on the basis of figures, just to give you an idea, last year, during the whole of 2019, there were 297 bags issued, or packs issued. And since coronavirus, from between March and the end of August, it's nearly 900 packs that we've issued already, and it's soon to exceed 1,000. So that's just in that time. But we've been really very blessed in the things we've received, as you've shown here. But also you said there seems to be a lot of food in this room, but when you consider how that food is going out and how quickly it's going out, it's actually not a lot, and it disappears quite quickly.
So how quickly would this room amount of food go?
Oh my goodness. There's no predicting how much we're going to issue each week, but I can pretty well guarantee that by next week we'll be needing more food to supplement. Not all of it, but certain amounts, the favourites, if you like. And that's just an ongoing situation. It's hard to predict what's needed each week, but as you've probably seen on Facebook and the website, which are a tremendous sort of communication, each week we put out there what we need, and it's fantastic. We get what we need.
So even though people are finding things tight at the moment, there's still a lot of generosity in the community?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the dichotomy of it. It's really interesting. There are so many who are willing to give and thankfully able to give. Also, there are many who are desperate, I can tell you. So it's a very interesting thing to be involved with, to see the whole breadth of need.
So Kevin, are you finding it a very fulfilling thing to be doing this at the moment?
Absolutely, yeah. It's really fulfilling, and it's great to be able to be part of a really good team, I've got to say, in helping to meet the need. And that team doesn't just include, we've got trustees, volunteers, but of course it's part of all those people who are giving. It's a whole team effort. So it is fulfilling in that way.
Yeah. So is the Facebook and the website being really helpful?
It is. I know it's not for everyone, but and for me, I've got to say, I don't use Facebook myself, but as a communication, it's absolutely crucial to the success of something like this. For instance, I think it was 3 weeks ago, on a Friday, there were our volunteers on from 12 till 4, came in and realised that we were actually short of, I think there was 3 or 4 items. Texted our lady Kate, who deals with Facebook, and she put on Facebook what was needed. An hour later, those things started to come in. People were donating. It's just amazing how quickly that can work. Yeah. So it is crucial, although I would never have said so previously. I wouldn't have been aware. So.
Yeah, so that's quite impressive, really. An impressive response from the community.
That was quite a good story.
Yeah.
And it's stories like that really sort of restore your faith in what God's work can do in this place. It's great.
So you see this very much as God being at work in the community?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's an opportunity for us to serve God in that way, and to help those in need. I mean, it's crucial. Yeah,
that's good. And are the supermarkets on board? Are the shops helping?
So our donate. You could say, where does all this food come from? It does come from individuals, but we've also had really good support from the supermarkets. Can I name names? There are other supermarkets available, obviously, but I've got to say Tesco's have been brilliant. Morrison's at Chippenham and Sainsbury's are just coming on board now. We're going to get good support from them. So it's all that makes life so much easier, really, because if we were struggling to get supplies, then the whole thing would crumble, really. So it's very good. Yeah.
So at the moment you're in Church House, and it looks like there's, you're almost bursting at the seams. So what are the plans for the future? And do you think that the need is going to continue in the future?
The need is going to continue. I think, as we all know, as a nation, we face lots of challenges, and individuals do. So with jobs, and it can be all sorts of reasons why people have to come to the food bank. It's their last option. They don't want to, but I don't think that's going to end anytime soon, as they say. This room, as you've seen, is some of what we've got. It overflows into the kitchen in Church House and into the back office. So we are very desperately short of space. And of course, post-COVID, the church want to need this room back for all their activities. So we've been looking, we have a sort of medium-term plan and a long-term plan. And our medium-term plan is to move in a few weeks, about 3 weeks. We'll be over the road at the old Marden Cafe, and that's actually quite a big unit. Then we can get set up. This is fairly organised, but in a much more organised way, and it'll be just so much easier for users as well, actually calling. So that'll be a great thing. Long term, so we have that. There are plans, obviously, to redevelop the old Marden Cafe, but we have that for at least 8 months minimum, possibly. Long term, we have our eyes on another permanent premises, and we're talking to people about that. Can't say too much, because that's part of negotiation. So it's an ongoing process. We are learning all the time, and in the same way, we're learning about what we have to do for the future. So
as a team, you're growing and you're looking to the future and ensuring you develop the work.
But it's really very much in faith that we go forward, I can tell you, because there are no guarantees. And as with receiving the food, there are no guarantees, and there's no guarantees about the future, what's going to happen in the country, where we're going to be. So it's we can only plan with what we know. Yeah.
So your faith in God is an important aspect of this work.
Always has been. Always has. What would we do without it? Well,
Indeed.
But I can say, it's been a blessing, and it's definitely, and I hope people find this elsewhere, it's in giving that you receive.
So Kevin, we've talked about individuals who help you and the supermarkets as well. Are there any other organisations that get involved?
There are. In fact, we work with, identifying the people in need is the main thing. So we work with agencies such as schools, the Family Centre, there's the Rise Children's Trust, various others, because they know where the need is. Yeah. So we work with them. We might deliver food parcels to them for them to distribute, or we can distribute on their behalf, or they can send people here. So it's a multifaceted thing, really, and we're really just grateful for all the support we get, and for those individuals we work with, and those agencies that we work with, and the supermarkets. It's a fantastic effort.
That's good. So you're really trying to identify the people most in need in the community.
That's the difficulty, because many people, as I said, really don't want to receive, because it's an embarrassment in a way, as they perceive it. But we want to encourage people to, if they're in need, they should not feel bad in any way about asking for help.
Okay. So if anybody sees this video and are in need, you'd love to see.
If they're in need, or if they know someone who's in need, then indeed, please ask them to come to the food bank, or just contact us, and we can deliver to them.
That's great. I suppose we should ask, what's the best way of contacting you then, Kevin?
Very good, Stephen, Well, there's Facebook, there's our email address, which is on Facebook, or there's our mobile number.
Thank you, Kevin. That's been very interesting, and I hope people find this interesting and do continue to support the food bank as they have been doing now.
How can they support? So you can obviously donate and food by bringing it into Church House at the moment, or when we're over the road at the old Marden Cafe. And of course, money is always welcome. And I don't like to talk about money, but it is always welcome. And that's obviously needed, because despite the donations that we get from individuals and supermarkets, we do run out. So we have to top up from our monetary reserves.
Yeah. And you might well need a bit of cash to sort out the old Marden Cafe.
Absolutely, really. Yes. All that
That's
stuff.
Great. So, I hope people get fully on board and support you well.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Kevin.